The events of the Manhwa begin quite quickly. In the middle of the night, a research institute where studies were carried out on the topic of transferring the human mind was attacked. Professor Chen Yang, a specialist in the study of the human brain, was in a terrible car accident. All the equipment in the center was destroyed. Next, some beautiful girl came to her boss. She was definitely worried about something, so make sure. The boss was busy eating, but the subordinate still could not ask if they managed to get what they had been looking for so long. But when the boss said that they couldn't find the flash drive, the beauty became very tense, which indicated that they would soon have more problems. The good news was that if the drive wasn't there, that meant the police couldn't get it either. The girl's new task was to conduct an additional search. She needed to find the flash drive faster than the police, otherwise, as she had previously assumed, it would not be easy. We are taken to the workplace of some smart programmer since he works at Google. He has to work late. This time he stayed almost until midnight. Only finishing at 12 o'clock at night was a real success. The manager suggested spending some time in a bar after work, since the boy still had so much free time. Everyone who managed to finish was going to take part in this small celebration. Only the main character of the story continued to freeze. Gao Yi was very tired, so he invited his colleagues to go to the bar without him. Besides, he was busy with more important things that day. Despite the fact that the other programmers were older, it was the main character who demonstrated the true old man's way of thinking. Feeding the cat and going to bed early were the main tasks for the remaining time. The guy got on his bike and hit the road. His parents wanted him to always be above the rest, like a real absolute I, but this way of thinking ultimately drove the young man into a corner. For this reason, when a brand new Ferrari was moving towards him at full speed, he didn't even think about trying to evade. After all, this was a chance not to go to the next shift. The guy's reflexes were on point, so as soon as he hesitated in his desire, he immediately jumped to the side, thereby saving his life. He was outraged that drivers considered the night a time when they could afford to drive as they pleased. They were not even afraid of the upcoming responsibility in the event of any situation. As soon as the guy got up, he noticed a strange storage device under his hand. Looking around, there was no one nearby, which means someone dropped it earlier. True, just a few seconds later, he gave up on this. Yet the cat was waiting for him at home. Throwing his leg on the bicycle, the young man set off on the road again without any difficulties. This evening was surprisingly noisy for their city. Cars with flashing lights, someone's screams, crowds of people, and everything like that. Every little thing screamed that something serious had happened. Everything looked as if an ordinary person definitely shouldn't get involved in all this squabbles, so the young man decided not to even try to find out the reason for such activity. At the same time, the police were extremely busy looking for something important, but they could not find anything. It was too early to give up, so the investigator ordered the process to continue. Jojoy was one of the search targets. The investigator promised that he could find her no matter what it took. The next few tens of minutes that the guy drove to the house were not so intense. He calmly walked to his entrance and then used the elevator. Gao Yi was a little ashamed because he disturbed his cat to open the door for him from the inside, but the fluffy cat himself didn't seem to mind providing such support. The main character didn't think about the nickname for a long time, so he nicknamed the cat Junjun. He wanted to pet him, but the pet was not a fan of this type of communication. He is a proud and spoiled electric cat who watches TV series almost all the time, eats deliciously, and also sleeps. He is the spitting image of me and any other hickey. Talking to Wang Wang, despite the success in completing the work, was too difficult a task for the guy. He hoped that at least tomorrow he would get around to it. While the guy was in the bathroom, the cat finally got hungry and went to recharge so that later he could continue studying popular TV series. The independence of this animal was truly amazing, because not only could it make decisions without human help, but also, if necessary, looked for its charge itself. The search for the station in the protagonist's bag led to an unusual result. In addition to the charger itself, the cat also pulled out the same flash drive that Gao Yi found recently. The spirit of a true lover of riddles and all equipment screamed inside the guy, because not checking such a find was a big omission. On the other hand, there could be some kind of virus hidden inside. Or there could be something more interesting on the drive, so the young man, filled with enthusiasm, began to study the contents. Suddenly, the light in Gao Yi's room turned on. The first thing he thought was that the llama was malfunctioning, but after sparks appeared, he began to worry that the flash drive had infected him with Windows 2091. After some time, darkness returned to the room again, and the filling of the disk finally became visible. There was something unusual inside. There was a girl sitting there in clothes for clinic patients. The stranger herself was watching the main character through a webcam. Only the beauty herself did not understand what place she was in and how exactly she ended up here. Besides, watching the giant through a small screen was no less creepy. Then the guy did not yet know that this meeting would change his life forever and finally make him happy. The girl's model was made of incredible quality, and her behavior seemed quite normal. The young man's assumption was that there was artificial intelligence in front of him. To confirm this, the stranger began to scan the filling of Gao Yi's room. An ordinary person really was not capable of such things. Among all the things, she noticed the guy's pass. From its content, it became clear that the guy was working for the elite organization. Only the employees did not have such stupid smiles. When the girl turned to the main character and asked who he really was, the young man was completely speechless. He worked in the cybersecurity department, but always wanted to develop something like this. Although smart AI was indeed something unusual even in their time, its persistence and desire to get an answer to the question asked scared the young man a little. According to the beauty, her name is Enshin, and she is the same person as the main character and all the other people with whom the guy has to interact every day. It was hard to believe, so the young man began to laugh even louder than when he first watched any of Jim Carrey's films. This behavior greatly embarrassed Enshin, but the young man praised his excellent sense of humor and asked him to tell him a funny joke. But she just continued to say that she really was an artificial intelligence. In addition, the young man's appearance greatly interfered with a normal conversation. After changing clothes, the boy began to demand to show some evidence if the girl locked inside the flash drive was really a person. The data might not have been publicly available, so the girl offered to hack the site and make sure of the veracity of her words. But doing something like that was very bad. As soon as the beauty tried to take Gaio weakly, he quickly succumbed. Proving that he was really capable of hacking any website was not so difficult. To make this quest a little more interesting, the hacker ability test will only take 30 minutes, during which the guy must gain access to the site. It was as easy as shelling pears because the guy previously belonged to members of the very influential criminal organization, Anonymous, and when he was caught, he had to become a white hat hacker. To the surprise of the main character, the information about his new girlfriend was actually saved. She had the 8th Dan, but she looked harmless, to end up inside a flash drive. But the girl came to this outcome not only because of her failure, but also because of the decisions she made. The girl's father was a policeman, so she knew many details about the city in which they lived. So one day she received information about paradise. This was the name of the medicine that affected the central nervous system, gradually destroying and destabilizing it. People became much more aggressive because of this poison. One of the organizations that were directly involved in the creation of this vitamin, due to the investigation against this group, the girl's father could not survive. Therefore, the girl decided to choose revenge as her main goal. She could not forgive the criminals because of whom her loved one died. At the moment, only Yan was known Tsu, a girl who was definitely part of this group, but nothing more. Then one very risky thought crept into the beauty's head. She wanted to get close to this girl, and then become a double agent, leaking information about the organization to the police. Gradually, everything began to work out. Only for the sake of this, I had to turn a blind eye to the truly terrible things that the girl's father tried to prevent at one time. The plan was quite ingenious. Even Agent 47 from the Hitman series of games could not have thought of it, because the girl became a friend of Yan's friend Tsu, and then met her while working at the club. To protect herself and hide all traces, the girl decided to use a pseudonym as her name. She called herself Katie. The first job that Yanzi instructed the girl to attract customers to their bar, because increasing profits is extremely important, to gain the trust of the fatal beauty. The girl worked day and night on this, carrying out any instructions she was told. Then on one of the working days, Yansu called Katie over and offered her a chance. The girl could earn 10 times more money. She finally managed to get to paradise, although it was not an easy task, but she was glad that she was still able to achieve such success. Thanks to the influence of her patroness, our girl who knows how to fight was able to reach the very edges of the group, receiving a lot of contacts. Since Katie's loyalty was no longer in question, Yansu decided to show how paradise, the terrible secret of their organization, is actually prepared. Only the next day turned out to be a much sadder ending for the beauty. When she finally met Yansu, the girl addressed her by her real name. She asked Xian not to be too nervous, after which she handed her one photograph, wondering whether the person depicted in it was familiar to the beauty or not. Shen's father could be seen. He looked a little shabby because at that time he had a huge amount of work. The revelation of her deception spoke of the bad fate that awaited the girl. It was unlikely that she would be released alive, and she understood this better than anyone. As soon as the truth came out, Anxian noticed that all her escape routes were cut off and she was ambushed by ill-wishers. The battle was life and death, but somehow the protagonist's girlfriend was able to resist the crowd of bandits. Everything was decided the moment someone pulled out a gun. Turning around, the girl noticed that her killer was a doll, very similar in appearance to her late father. The story really sounded incredible, but seeing a living person inside a flash drive was also not something normal, and Xian's soul seemed to simply move into this flash drive. Only they are not in some fantasy manhwa is about the distant future. After the shot, her father's colleagues quickly arrived, so the representatives of the organization had to run away. Her investigation ended before she was able to obtain important information, which the girl regrets even now, because she really wanted to achieve justice. Anne's body was badly damaged. Her consciousness was between the states of life and death, while she more than perfectly felt physical pain. The situation was difficult. Her father's colleague, who had known the girl from an early age, ran to her, hoping that it was still possible to save the beauty, but his partner called for reinforcements. This young man's name was Zhou Fei. He was very worried about our An Xin, but he could not do anything, so he simply held her in his arms, trying to convince her that everything would be fine. Even the girl was unable to cope with the task. Fortunately, they managed to get her to the hospital on time. The operation took quite a long time, because the shot hit the internal organs. In fact, they met with this young man. The bullet hit the girl's heart, because of which she lost a lot of blood, after which she was declared brain dead. Even though they had already done everything they could, the young man could go to Professor Chen Yang, whose name flashed at the beginning of the story, and who also unexpectedly looked like Dr. Vegapunk from Van Piece, said that the transfer of consciousness is quite risky and not always an effective method of solving the problem. It was necessary to decide quickly, because the transfer was possible only within 6 hours from the moment of death, which is how An Xin ended up inside the flash drive. The transfer of human consciousness to a drive was inherently a rewriting process. It was simply that the code used in the case of the human body was changed to binary. Everything should have gone smoothly. The guy was happy. Even if he couldn't be with his girlfriend anymore, they could talk as before. He did not know that a doll was standing behind him at that moment, intending to finish what she failed to do in the port. Leaving the witness alive was too risky. The young man's sixth sense, developed over the years of service, did not fail this time either. He quickly noticed something strange, so he was ready to use his powers. Soon shooting began at the sealed doors of the operating room. An alarm was declared throughout the entire laboratory. But this was unlikely to stop the attacker from achieving his goal. The struggle for An Xin's life continued every minute. Her boyfriend tried to restrain the representatives of the organization, but for a long time he would not be able to protect the ward. When the process was finally completed, the guy gave the command to the professor to hide along with the flash drive while he held off the attackers. Only this move was also foreseen by the enemy. They were already watching the car that the old man was planning to get into. The chase continued for some time when the two sports cars finally collided in a clinch. Driving at high speed on a wet road was not easy for both drivers. At one of the turns, the professor was unable to demonstrate the skills he had acquired during various racing simulators, so his car suffered serious damage. To make sure that the problematic researcher and the flash drive along with him were destroyed, the cops were already on their tail. Now everything the main character saw on the street took on a different meaning. Not only the police, but also groups and individuals are interested in finding this flash drive. The guy wanted to take the drive to the police station the next day, but An Xin asked not to do this because even among the cops there were traitors. Information about the operation was leaked by someone, which means that until the rat is identified, you can't trust anyone. At least that's what the girl herself thought. The beauty's position was that she planned to fight the evil organization even in this state, but the guy did not plan to help her in this. Paradise was indeed very dangerous, but knowing about its dangers, no one would try it, which means they would be safe. The guy wanted to continue working, resting, and working again. Saving the city and innocent people was not part of the main character's plans. Despite his silence, he was very selfish. And besides, he did not have the powers of Superman to be such an altruist. Let Gao Yi Kodo, like a real god, he asked to be spared and not to be drawn into such adventures, because he still wanted to live and see the adaptation of Vagabond, because he has been following this manga since its release. Then the girl decided to use more effective methods. She said that she would hand him over to the police for hacking the site because he had illegally entered and gained access to hidden information. The main character pretended to be afraid of this fate, so he agreed with An Xin, and then with a quick movement, he took out a flash drive from the computer. He doubted that the girl was initially in herself, offering such madness to an ordinary programmer. He still planned to take the flash drive to the police. But getting rid of the smart girl turned out to be not so easy. She knew that she would most likely receive a refusal, so while they were talking, she uploaded herself onto the computer. The guy planned to turn off his device, but she also had a worthy answer to this decision. The beauty promised to help the young man finally build a relationship with the girl he liked. As soon as Anshin was inside the system, all its contents became accessible information to her, except for a voluminous collection of Japanese-made cartoons. The guy saved a photo of one girl. There were more than 267 photographs of just one beauty on the computer. You didn't need to be a detective to figure out what was going on. Since the photographs were not of particularly high quality, and the angle was chosen at random, one could conclude that they were taken secretly, which means that Gao Yi could not talk about his feelings. This approach most likely spoke of secret love or strange hobbies, but she had no right to judge anyone in this situation. The shrewd friend confused the main character a little, because even close friends did not know about this hobby. He tried for some time to play as if there was nothing of the kind. Only Anne knew everything. Soon, someone rang the doorbell of the young man. It was already late. The main character was definitely not expecting guests, so he was very alarmed by what was happening. Approaching the peephole, the young man began to look carefully, hoping that his assumptions would turn out to be truly wrong. Otherwise, events could unfold as they pleased. The figure behind the door seemed unfamiliar. After the girl's story, one could expect that people from that organization might show up. But how did they know about him? The girl was a martial arts specialist, so the young man's fear of the unknown when there was a huge amount of weapons at hand was not clear to her. The man's face was not visible behind the door, only a large black umbrella. The girl offered a knife for cutting fruit as a weapon for protection, but the guy ate the fruit with the peel. Then the guy remembered the wonderful proverb, "It takes a cat to grow 1,000 days. Use it once." So taking his cyborg killer from the Terminator, he began to confidently approach the door. What Zhongjong and Anshin were amazed at, how this man could be a brilliant hacker, and then become an equally skilled specialist in protecting against cyber attacks. The cat would open the doors and the guy would use his charger to hit a home run in the intruder's face. When the door was finally opened, the main character swung with all his might, but saw only a food delivery courier who did not quite understand what he was seeing with his own eyes. It didn't take the man too long to stop the blow with an umbrella. The guy couldn't believe he was so weak. The guy tried to justify himself because he accidentally made a mistake, but at the same time he was sincerely glad that it was not some walking villain who showed up to him. But the main character didn't understand why he needed to take out an umbrella indoors. Then the courier shared the story that on this day, ghosts and spirits go hunting, and this is a way to protect yourself from them. The young man did not order anything, so it was obvious that the cat had a hand in this. The ordered fish was prepared by a highly qualified chef. Dissatisfied with his life, Gao Yi did not understand why his cat eats better than him, because he sits at home every day and only watches his TV series. It was hard to believe that the main character was actually such a coward, so Anshin suggested calling each other sisters since he was so cowardly. According to the guy, this was the first time he was afraid of something, because before he, like Mikey from the Tokyo Avengers, could go out alone against a whole crowd. The former investigator could not argue against such arguments, but next time she hoped that the young man would not leave her to the mercy of fate. At the same time, the courier, who had left the protagonist's apartment, was already intending to go to the bus stop when he noticed a suspicious person, like him, walking with a black umbrella. When the stranger came close enough, the man noticed his face, mistaking the bad guy for a real ghost, so he began to run away from there without looking back. This person from the organization already knew that it was the young man who turned out to be the owner of the flash drive. His face was poorly visible in the photo. The evil corporation had a lot of talents. Using the cameras, they were able to find the approximate place of residence of the main character, but they still needed to guard the exit from the area. To increase the chance of finding the right person, the scary stranger ordered his people to interview every guy they saw. The interrogation of witnesses had to be done by a cute Lolya with a lollipop, who knew her job and skillfully pulled information out of people. Meanwhile, the main character tried to teach his mechanical cat not to carry fish around the house, because it not only leaves greasy marks, but also fills everything with its aroma. Fluffy didn't understand well when someone was scolding him, so the main character suggested using him instead of a mop next time. Observing everything from the outside, Shin began to doubt that the cat was really electric, because robots do not eat regular food. According to Gao Yi himself, his favorite Zhangjiang was almost the same as an ordinary yard cat, only in some aspects even better. It looked strange, because if an electric cat is almost 100% the same as a regular one, the young man should have thought about buying himself a real animal. The young man's opinion was a little strange, as he believed that this was not necessary, because his robotic cat copes with its functions perfectly. Then Inshin suggested getting the guy a robot girl, but he only needed the real one and the one he secretly loved so much. Miss Wang is the most beautiful girl in their group. Absolutely everyone falls in love with her, even the food delivery people who only catch a glimpse of her. Many tried to get her, but she refused everyone, but even so, other people remained kind to her, helping her when necessary. Finding out about her preferences was more difficult than proving that it was Light Yagami who was Kira. She rejected the beautiful, the rich, and even those who simultaneously possessed both of these qualities. And Shin did not consider herself an expert in love affairs, but in her opinion, girls looked not at money but at true feelings, although the main character has no chance in any case. The young man's interest in the deal continued to grow. The beauty promised to help the guy in conquest if he also helped her, although this raised some doubts in Gao Yi because the girl is a martial artist, not Cupid. Only in Shin's eyes, taekwondo and love look the same, so even in such matters one could safely rely on her. Before she could finish her sentence, her model began to flicker strangely, as if she were some kind of bug. The girl's body disappeared, because it would be saved on the flash drive. Her consciousness could only last for 12 hours, after which it would be completely destroyed. Despite all the knowledge that the main character possessed, doing something with the transferred consciousness, which was about to disappear, was beyond his powers. According to Inshin herself, for her continued existence she needs a more suitable container. The flash drive is only a temporary option, which, according to the procedure, needs to be replaced. Without thinking twice, the guy suggested choosing a female robot as an option, which had recently become popular in their world, even if they cost a lot of money. Making such a decision, even if it saved the girl's life, was too terrible for her because she had never even dated anyone. The girl's program code involves placing her in a body that closely resembles a human one, otherwise rejection will begin. Cracking some code was not a problem, but in a global sense this will not solve the problem, but will only delay it. But the main character still decided to take on this. Let the guy really prove that he is not a fool, but finding a carrier for a girl will not be very easy. There were not many options. The guy knew where to find the necessary equipment, but it would take time in any case, but for now he downloaded the girl into his phone to save her soul from destruction. The next day was quite fast because there was not much time left before the second attempt at destruction. The guy immediately decided to go for a new body for his girlfriend. The journey took place through a large shopping center, where the same henchmen of the guy in the mask were already looking for him. He strongly resembled an ordinary scarecrow, of which you can meet quite a few if you find yourself on the field. One guy, whose hair was a little lighter than that of the main character, attracted their attention. At that moment, he was communicating with a married girl with whom they were having an affair. He was worried because he thought that his lover's husband had sent people after him, so without any hesitation, he began to run away from the strangers. This whole situation was observed by Gao Yi himself, who wanted to rent an electric bike. He was glad that now it was not him who was being caught, and the target of the attackers was not a flash drive. When one of the bandits started talking about the drive, the main character's heart began to beat very quickly, even if now he was just riding a bicycle. Only the boy they caught did not know anything about any flash drive, so he did not understand why they bothered him at all. After all, he is an ordinary citizen. That same cutie decided to do the interrogation. She asked her colleagues to make way because her methods were very difficult to implement. The process was completed in just a few minutes. As a result of the interrogation, it was possible to find out that he really did not know anything about the flash drive. What infuriated the members of the organization most of all was that even though he didn't have a flash drive, he was running away from them at the speed of a bullet. If the guy didn't give an objective reason, they would beat him up again. Then he told about his story with a married woman. The blonde from their company decided to have a conversation after all, because his wife had recently left him for her lover. Meanwhile, Gao himself got to the right place. It was the house of his best friend who could also help solve his problem. Wang Qianxun was glad to see brother Gao visiting. She was secretly in love with him, but could not admit it, so his rare visits were very important for the girl. Only the guy came not to visit her, but to visit her older brother. His name was Wang Ganyu, head of the Gan company Du, and also the best among 3D modeling specialists. When the purpose of the guy's visit turned out to be the girl's seal, the guy decided to take him aside. They are men and understand each other very well. His friend's house was furnished in the best traditions of fantasy about the distant future, neon stairs, hidden light, and a bunch of different things that made life much more convenient. The creation of 3D models reached a new level when the main character's best friend introduced his devices to the market. Now it has truly become possible to realize any idea. Models in such a printer were created in an unusual way. The process was more like magic or some special ability. When creating humanoid models, it is possible to customize almost every part of the body for a specific task, the beauty. And Shin decided not to miss this chance. There was little that was real from her previous body, except perhaps her face and hair. Her figure was greatly changed at the request of the girl herself because she wanted to feel this difference for herself. Gaoxi would want to see Miss Wang as the printed girl, but praised his taste since it was difficult to come up with such a beautiful model. Time was running out, so the young man was about to leave. Even though he was grateful to his friend, he did not want to give the development for a test drive. Sister Wang Gunyuya was not very happy with the choice of Brother Gao, because he preferred some printed girl to her over a real one. But the guy's best friend confidently stated that he would have done the same, because the created model was really more beautiful. Then the vulnerable girl was completely disappointed in the male sex. All the necessary parts were loaded inside, including batteries, so they could safely start the consciousness transfer process. She promised to turn into a vengeful spirit and torment the main character if all else fails, and paying her off with offerings in the form of KFC chicken is definitely not going to work. The girl's consciousness actually ended up inside the robotic doll, but since the process was not completely completed, she could not yet control the new body. An hour later, Anshin was finally able to get used to the new controls. Now, in order to move normally, she needs to think about every movement. Despite all the practice, standing confidently on her feet was too difficult a task for the beauty, so she asked the main character to help her with this. Like a real cat, Zhang Zhang decided to help in this matter. Appearing out of nowhere and finding himself underfoot, the girl could not resist. But according to the cat himself, he only created a chance for his indecisive owner, who, over many years of watching Miss Wang, was never able to take the first step. Getting up or continuing to move on her own was beyond Anne's capabilities, so she hoped that she could depend on the young man for the first time. Even though the girl's body was not real, the guy was very embarrassed even by this. He shouldn't have let us down because he is the main character of his story. A little more time passed and control became not such a big problem for the girl. She was sure that she would soon be able to walk without thinking. But she definitely shouldn't have rushed because the batteries only worked for 8 to 9 hours from the moment of startup. If you put a load on the system, the time would be reduced. When the charge drops to 0, the beauty's body will turn off automatically. A special cord located at neck level acted as a charger. In addition to the fast charging function, the wire had another special method of use which the main character had no idea about. Unexpectedly for the main character himself, the uprising of the machines happened faster than they had time to quarrel at least once, so the girl used the cord against him. Even though this was just a test of Gao Yi's reaction, the girl's face looked quite fierce, as if she really wanted to kill him. Getting rid of the witness seemed like a fairly logical decision, but the young man asked not to forget that it was he who gave her a second chance to take revenge. According to the guy, he is only interested in Miss Wang, so the girl's threat about his punishment in case of contraindicated actions worried the young man little. As agreed, the main character helped the girl find a new body. Now he wanted to receive proper support in his love affairs. But before trying to match Gao Yi and Miss Wang, our robo-beauty needed to meet one person. The next day, she and Anshin finally went outside. The girl rejoiced at how beautiful nature was, because now she could enjoy its views again. Those same Yan guys wanted to hit on the girl too. They didn't recognize her as Katie, so they just let her through after all. Their goal was the boy. Anshin's memory was better developed. She quickly recognized them as people from the organization, but this did not affect her plan to go to Professor Chen. Meanwhile, her comrade in arms and the brilliant doctor himself were still inside the laboratory. They were trying to figure out what could be done in this situation. Professor Chen himself understood what it was like to lose a loved one, because after separation from his old wife, he managed to find a new one. But after 24 hours, there was no consciousness left even on the flash drive. After leaving the room, the guy turned to his boss, who had previously worked with her father. It was not possible to save the girl, so the young man wanted to take the blame on himself. The girl was as stubborn as her father before. Initially, everyone was against Anshin's decision to join the gang to obtain information. They failed to save the young investigator, but they can at least avenge her by catching all the criminals from this dark and criminal organization. Scarecrow wanted to catch them most of all. Before getting in touch with her partners, the girl decided to go to her father's grave to renew the oath that she had previously been unable to keep. The next day, the main character planned to go to work as if nothing had happened. but he was stopped by a new girlfriend. Now she lives with him until the problem with the criminal organization is resolved. He was already late for work, so he didn't like this behavior. Then the beauty asked him to look down. Several strange types could be seen among the passers-by. These people were members of the corporation, so it was necessary to come up with something unusual. Otherwise, the main character would not be able to leave the house in the near future. The key lay in that same flash drive. Even though the guy found it, it was important for the bandits to make sure that Anshin's soul was not inside, which could reveal their secrets. The first solution that came to the mind of the brilliant programmer was to create a program that imitates the behavior of a girl. It was not easy to deceive the bad guys, so the girl willingly expressed her doubts. After all, in case of failure, death awaits not only the main character. They acted out a scene on the street, as if a couple in love had quarreled over a girl on a flash drive. The guy said that he had picked her up by chance and didn't know anything. To make the game seem more believable, the girl used several techniques against Gao Yi and then decided to throw that same flash drive at him. She began to leave as if she was simply offended by her boyfriend, and the young man tagged along, apologizing for what happened, not even thinking about returning for the drive. The bandits decided to look into the issue. It seemed like the flash drive was really needed. They were only the first step in the organization, so they didn't know for sure what was on the device. Soon the Scarecrow returned to Yansu has good news, because he and the team he had previously assembled still managed to find the necessary device. To make sure, they decided to insert a flash drive into one of the devices themselves. The drive actually contained the Anshin program. Katie, who appeared on the screen, was not particularly happy to meet Yansu, although the villainous Ai seemed to have serious plans for the girl until she found out about the setup. The girl wanted to warn. She asked not to think that they had won, because she would definitely be able to avenge her father. Justice would prevail. Their argument continued for some time. Yanjia expressed her respect because the girl almost managed to penetrate the inner circle of the organization. Yansu even felt sorry for Katie, because she would die so young without achieving any significant results in her career as an investigator. She was sure that the girl had no more chance of winning, after which she took out the flash drive and destroyed it with the help of her heels. This working day turned out to be a little more difficult than the previous ones, but the guy didn't mind staying late because this evening he wanted to watch his beloved. Miss Wang also finished her business quite late, and the rain pouring outside was a serious hindrance. Today she forgot to take an umbrella with her. To earn points, as the main character in some dating simulator decided, he appeared at the right moment, and in his hands was a huge black umbrella. The guy pretended that they didn't know each other, although he knew a lot about Miss Wang. She shared that she forgot to take an umbrella today, but there was no need to see her off because she was waiting for a person. It was very difficult to catch a taxi in this place, so they agreed that Gao Yi would take the beauty to the nearest metro station. They walked together under an umbrella, talking about various topics, sometimes even working issues flashed, because they are representatives of the same company. The beauty thanked her savior because he walked her to the metro at such a late hour, but like a real Sigma, the guy said that he was just on his way. She asked for his number so that she could add him to her contacts. They used WeChat. It was not so multifunctional but suitable for communication. The good mood of the protagonist should have lasted for a few more days. He was finally able to take the first step, although he could not even think about it before. Returning home, the guy noticed a rather cute picture. His girlfriend Anshin and Jung-jun watched TV series together, but he didn't understand when they managed to become friends. When Miss Wang sent a message of gratitude to the main character, he seemed to know the truth. His body became light and free. He still couldn't believe that he could do it, but Anshin asked him not to argue with her anymore about her ideas because she really was an expert. The main character's mood was initially not very suitable for attracting the attention of someone so in demand, so the first step the girl decided to add to Gao Yi's confidence. They bought new clothes, chose a discreet and stylish suit for the guy. Perhaps if the programmer stops dressing at home, other girls will pay attention to him. Anshin also bought herself new things. Now her figure was more suitable for such things, so she put together a rather unusual look for herself. The main character did not feel comfortable in the new look, even though the changes were moving the guy for the better. Everyday clothes still seemed more comfortable and practical. The guy received plus 100 points for his attractiveness, but this was only the first step for a complete transformation. They went to the salon. As soon as the guy started getting his hair cut, he suddenly started thinking about where his girlfriend got the money for new things. But in fact, she simply took them from the protagonist's savings, so he sank a little when he learned about this news. Gao Yi not to be so greedy, because now her accounts are monitored and it is not possible to carry out any fraud. It turned out that he would have to spend a lot of money to become attractive. The programmer already regretted the decision he had made. The first piece of advice Shin gave to her student was not to try to start a relationship, because when a guy shows interest, it scares away his prey. After a good day, the guy would hang out on TikTok while watching the news on his TV. This lifestyle more than suited him. An urgent report shown on the screen showed the detention of one of those who became victims of paradise. The drug was truly dangerous for all people. It was because of such cases that the girl decided to become an investigator, following in the footsteps of her father, only now they are not doing anything. Even though it was necessary to take the first steps in capturing the entire criminal organization, the main character did not quite understand what they should do. She decided to use the same strategy. Her plan was to make the main character like Yan-Su, and how she once tried to join the inner circle of the group. Their first goal was to penetrate the ranks of the gang. This is not so difficult to implement, but as they grow, the attitude towards the main character can change greatly if they find out about something bad about him. The minimalist style of the mafia beauty, but he definitely didn't want to admit it. Yan-Su is one of the heads of the organization, according to the data that was obtained over a long period of investigation. There are 3 main pillars in total. Specifically, Miss Yan is responsible for the retail trade. She runs many bars and clubs, so the easiest way to get inside is through her. The second was a guy nicknamed Poker. He was in charge of wholesale trade. His face is known to many big players, but they don't have the money to meet him. The most mysterious and secretive of them is Claw, a specialist who produces the drug. Not many people know his identity. If we talk about the goal that they will pursue in a global sense, then through Yan-Su, Guy must contact the other 2 heads of the organization. This was an extremely dangerous option for doing business, and Shin tried to convince the young man because she is experienced in espionage matters. Then the main character reminded his friend that if she really was an excellent spy, they would not even have met her. Spying was safe for Gao Yi, of course, provided that this information remained in this room, because they don't dig under everyone, plus the guy already had a dark past. Even so, he continued to doubt, because he had never taken part in such operations before. Moreover, the price of failure was extremely high, but the girl reminded him of Miss Wang. If the guy manages to bring the mafia to light, then he will become the hero of an entire city or even a country, because who knows when paradise will begin to be distributed further. The prospect of Miss Wang conquering the main character, and not the other way around, was very interesting to Gao Yi. He was ready to take on this matter, then Shin decided to prepare him properly. The first thing our boy had to learn was acting, because he would have to lie and play his role throughout the entire operation. As a task to speed up the young man's learning, the following option was proposed, like Panda from the Magic Battle. The guy must switch between 3 options. The training was carried out not only in switching between personalities, the young man needed to pump himself up. Then his mission would become much easier. The classes were truly cruel. The guy could only take a break from the tyrant mentor during periods when Shin went to exercise. The guy knew one secret technique that allowed him to activate the backup power. In this mode, the girl did not regain consciousness. The robot performed only the original functions, such as massage. Mentally, the young man became ready for taekwondo training. The 3rd week of training as an investigator working within a criminal group began quite cheerfully. Despite lengthy strength training, the martial artist was able to take down the main character without any difficulties, and the metal body only added additional damage to her. The girl tried to train a young and clueless warrior. In battle, the enemy would not give time to prepare or fly in the clouds, so her training was tough. Gao Yi was very far from the level of a real specialist, but he had already taken the right path because he was no longer trying to escape from problems, but was trying to find an option on how to solve them. It was impossible to solve everything by force or perseverance alone. Time after time, Shin proved this to the inexperienced young man, who simply attacked her head-on. The main character would not have been able to pass these cruel tests if, at each fall, his girlfriend did not talk about how far he was from taking Miss Wang's heart. An experienced mentor was quickly able to promote the boy to the next levels. He was still a weakling, but he could cope with someone on the level of those bandits who were looking for a flash drive. Gao Yi himself noticed the result. He managed to dodge more blows than before. Now he did not always leave combat training with bruises. Protecting loved ones was the main motivation of the young man. Earlier, he had already allowed a situation in which a person dear to him suffered because of his indecision. The boy was an ordinary nerd, so he often got it from local hooligans. Time after time, he took it for granted. But when they started pestering his girlfriend, he could not do anything. It was at that moment that he realized what he really wanted most. He wanted to become stronger, in the hope that no one would leave him. Such an influx of motivation suddenly changed the course of the battle. The young man managed to grab his mentor's hand. He was ready to prove that he was anyone, but definitely not a weakling. To prove his ability to protect his loved one so much that the main character forgot himself, attacking the girl with all his might. This is the first time he managed to throw away his master. Even though the guy lost control, he was proud of growing above himself. The guy was not yet ready to become a pro, but he could easily pass for an ordinary spy. The required minimum was achieved in just a few weeks. According to the precepts of One Punch Man, every day the young man did 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 abdominal crunches, and also ran 10 kilometers. These trainings no longer caused any particular problems for the young man, so Anshin constantly complicated them. But this gave results. Now they could go to the bar. Going straight to Miss Yan was like visiting a lion's cage, but when the guy agreed to this crazy adventure, he cut off any way back for himself. The guy didn't quite understand why the robot should make a mask, but the girl didn't do it for beauty. It was something like a habit that had developed over the years. The training also paid off in the fact that Miss Wang invited him to tea. They could chat about something for a few hours and have a great time. He was truly happy about it. But the mentor was against it, because if the guy does not agree right away, he will be able to get much more than he originally asked for. If she has so many suitors, then she will definitely be hooked by the refusal. There was also a tormenting feeling of anxiety. What if by this act he would only alienate the girl, losing at least the minimum chance of starting to date her? Before dealing with his marital status, the young man still had to complete the errand they had agreed on, so they went to the bar. The girl suggested starting to implement their plan with the bald man who stood behind them, because he was Miss Yan's assistant. Soon a stranger tried to approach the girl. She took this not as a threat, but as an excellent chance, because it was thanks to this person that she would be able to attract the attention of Brother Xiang. As soon as Anshin called the security, the bald man immediately intervened, demanding that the visitor quickly leave the bar. The man turned to Brother Xiang, warning him not to make him angry. He was pushed out so quickly that even the drink came out of his mouth. A fight broke out because the man simply couldn't answer inside the bar, because now he's bald on his arm like an open book, and no one will stand up for him. Several more of the man's accomplices planned to join the fight. They wanted to beat up Xiang's brother altogether. Then the main character decided to intervene in what was happening. In his opinion, it was too much to attack an unarmed man in a crowd without any apparent reason. But the bad guys were interested in who the guy was. Before Gao Yi was attacked, he only managed to utter one pretentious phrase that he heard in some anime. His hobby is to interfere in other people's affairs. The fight was quite unfair, because many armed opponents opposed one young man at once, but the training was not in vain. He easily scattered them. Watching the main character's fighting style, everyone around him thought that he was some kind of psycho, because he was not even going to spare anyone, using the maximum of his strength. Only the guy liked this nickname, because in a fight he really didn't think about anything else other than inflicting the maximum level of damage. To quickly deal with the hooligans, the young man began to intimidate them, saying that he was just warming up. The hardest things should begin when he went into complete madness. Seeing how brutally and ferociously the stranger fought, the bandits decided to think 3 times before getting involved in this matter. With the words, "We remember you," the gang of criminals began to run away through the gateways, but the young man himself was dissatisfied with this end, because he was hoping for a valiant battle. Only the escape of those guys freed the young man's hands in relation to those whom he knocked out first. Now no one will protect the lying ones. The guy's acting skills really reached a new level. He could easily play the Joker in the sequel. He was the best at portraying psychopaths. Brother Xiang was amazed at how cool the main character was, even though he was also a guy, his cheeks turning red. When the bald man finally got up, he thanked Brother Gao for his help. But the young man only said that he could finally find those on whom he could take out his anger. When asked about the reason for his anger, the young man told a story about how he beat his boss and was then fired from his job. He skillfully brought up the topic he needed and made it clear that he was now looking for a new occupation. The young man was already planning to leave, then Brother Xiang himself intervened. He said that he liked the character of the main character because he is not only quick-tempered and strong, but at the same time, fair. So, given all the boy's abilities, the bald man simply could not help but offer him the position of bouncer in their bar. Then the guy asked the bald man if he was afraid that Gao Yi would beat their boss. After thinking a little, Brother Xiang assured him that this would definitely not happen, because their boss was a beautiful lady. They needed workers. Not many stayed in such places of their own free will. Staff turnover was high, especially for security guards. The guy promised to think about it. The success of the first step of the operation was incredible, but most of all, the main character was happy that he no longer had to pretend to be cool. The guy's acting was still lame in his master's opinion, but to an ordinary person it should have looked very impressive, so she praised Gao Yi. According to their agreement, the girl had to find actors who would play the role of the Gopniks, but she was not looking for anyone. They were really bad guys. Such jokes were not very to the taste of the main character. He asked next time to keep at least him informed about what was happening. But Enshin did this not out of harm, but out of concern, because if the guy was scared, his acting would have been worse than ever. At the entrance to this gateway stood Zhou Fei. The girl immediately recognized her former friend, because only he could look so gloomy. The beauty insisted that they run away, but Gao Yi himself did not see the point in this since the police were already here, so he continued to stand still. When Zhou Fei additionally asked the suspicious citizens to stop, a trembling still overtook Enshin. It was clear that the two had already known each other before. Just recently, a man received information that there had been a fight somewhere here. He was interested in whether the guys had seen any strange people. Then the girl said that they were just passing by and were definitely not involved in anything dubious. Miss Anne wanted to leave as soon as possible. Her fears were not groundless, because Zhou Fei recognized her as the same girl he had known for so long, but he quickly returned to normal because the real Anshin was in the hospital. He suggested that it might just be a similar person, and besides, the figure was significantly different, so the policeman asked for forgiveness. He was staring too hard because the girl looked like his friend. In any case, it was already late, so the man insisted that the young people not wander around the streets but go home as soon as possible. On his wrist, Enshin noticed a bracelet that she had given him a long time ago, an ordinary, unremarkable red thread with bells. This was quite a long time ago. Then the girl was in a hurry to meet Zhou Fei, but because she noticed the thief, she decided to help the police in catching him. The guy was still dissatisfied because catching criminals was not the girl's responsibility. Today was his birthday, and she was late, even though she scolds him every time for being late. Since An really forgot about this day, she had to improvise, although even her acting skills could not hide her strong excitement. He hoped to receive his gift sooner, and really hoped to see a new gamepad there for my PlayStation 5, because the previous one was already worn out enough. The girl was not at all ready for the celebration, so she also did not have a gift with her. She urgently needed to come up with something. And then a brilliant idea came to her, because the story about catching the thief was not just an excuse, but a situation that actually happened. During the chase, a salesman called out to her. He said that fate itself had brought them together, so in order not to lose the favor of higher powers, the girl must buy a bracelet. According to the merchant, he was imbued with the power of Buddha, so he could cope with any adversity that awaited the beauty on her life's path. The girl thanked the old man, but she was in a hurry because the thief would not wait for her to buy something, so the merchant had to go without payment. This thing would be suitable as a gift, but the man guessed that the girl had forgotten about his birthday and brought a random thing so as not to be guilty. Despite this, the policeman was willing to wear this bracelet and treasure it, because Enshin rarely gives anything to others. She really was sorry that now she could not tell the whole truth to her old friend, otherwise he simply would not allow her to act on her own. The man himself was waiting for the day when he could take revenge for the girl whom he could not protect. He decided to bring their family's work to the end. Returning home from the mission, the guys discussed what had happened. Our programmer was interested in whether the girl knew this investigator. There was no point in hiding, so Enshin shared her story. This man was a subordinate of her father, and they had even met once. He could not be dragged into this. The policeman would have interfered with the investigation, prohibiting it from being carried out despite the high chance of success. But the main character did a great job today, because he managed to gain trust. The next step after Brother Xiang will be to influence Yansu. Her confession will open the door for the young man to the elite of the group. Regular clothes seemed much more pleasant to the guy, but his partners didn't seem to care at all because the girl and him were simply lying on a chair. After the fight, Gao Yi was very tired, so he decided to check the refrigerator for something tasty. At such moments, he even envied the androids, who could simply feed on electricity. The main character's cat also expressed a desire to eat something, but ordering fast food all the time was too harmful, so his mentor decided to take over the young man's food. The refrigerator was almost completely empty. Among the few products, only rice noodles, leftover vegetables and mushrooms and mangoes could be distinguished. It was impossible to cook practically anything from this, so the girl decided to cook some mangoes for Gao Yi, as well as Zhongjuna. The girl turned into a real ghoul for a few seconds, because as soon as Miss Wang wrote a message to the main character, he immediately began to ignore his partner. The mango noodle soup looked quite attractive, even if the name suggested that it was something inedible. The young man and his cat were not happy with this food. They decided that ordering delivery from some restaurant was a more profitable and safe idea. So that the cat can justify its purchase, Junjong had to try Anshin's cooking first, and since he was a robot, he was in no danger. A few minutes of preventative work on the part of the girl and the main character, together with his cat, have already started tasting. Until the food was in the stomach, the guy asked to delete all data from the computer if he died, the cat agreed, but in fact he planned to post every shameful secret of the owner on the internet. Surprisingly, the combination of mushrooms, mangoes, and hot soup was not so bad. The guy praised the girl's innovative cooking style. However, she was still dissatisfied because earlier they did not like the prepared dish. In addition, it brought back bad memories. Her mother died early, so she and her father were left alone at a time when Enshin did not even go to middle school. The cooking was completely taken over by the girl. Her father was often delayed due to his work as a police officer. Once, the beauty wanted to take revenge on him and put some fruit in the soup with vegetables. But to the girl's surprise, her father really liked the prepared dish. From that moment on, she almost always prepared soups with sweet fruits like mango. Of course, the first of her culinary experiments were not tasty, but when she managed to get her hands on it, her father could no longer try. The guy tried to support his friend, but she only said that the best way she could repay her father for his kindness was to destroy the crime syndicate. Watching the young man and his cat enjoying their food, Anshin regretted that she would no longer be able to taste the wonderful taste of food. But the programmer, even more brilliant than Mark Zuckerberg himself, had a solution even for such a situation. He wanted to help the girl finally become happy. The girl's body was indeed unreal, but it was possible to give it the same functions as the real one. The principle was simple. You need to repeat the structure of the human body, only using artificial devices with the same function. Since the girl's body was made on a printer, she did not feel pain, which means that modification did not even require putting her consciousness into sleep. Inside the belly of such models, there was always a special compartment with boards and wires. This is a key element in the setup and operation of the system. The system was based in everything on the real human body, which means that the artificial stomach will also need to be cleaned. The rubber itself is not capable of conveying the taste, so special software will be installed. In total, a person can perceive 5 different tastes, including spicy, bitter, salty, sweet, and sour. The main character's system was a special set of programs and rules, which, when additionally configured correctly, allowed one to feel the taste of all food. Before the upgrade took effect, it was necessary to reboot the system. The young man wanted to do this without warning. The button was located slightly below the neck. The girl didn't want anyone to touch her, so she was ready to do the shutdown herself. Besides, she was still afraid of the main character. The process did not take much time. A few seconds after pressing, and Shin's consciousness was transferred to a state of hibernation. Next, it was up to Brother Gao to install drivers for the devices he placed in the system. This should also not take more than a minute. After turning it on, the girl felt significant differences. Her body began to move differently. Then the young man suggested celebrating the update with a jar of intoxicating drink. Initially, Shin was skeptical about this idea, but as soon as she took the first sip, she could not get over the shock, because the taste was really one-in-one. After trying the product, a picture appeared in her head with a list of ingredients and parameters of the food or drink. Since this was the personal development of the main character, no one else could install a similar system for her. In addition, he also constantly modifies it. It was hard to believe that such a strange person could develop such really cool things, but in fact, there was a sadder truth behind this skill. The young man is very afraid of loneliness, so he got himself an electronic cat that will not grow old, will not get sick, and will always be nearby. And so that June could exist calmly and happily, the guy developed all these systems for him alone, and also added consciousness to them. The villains also did not stand still. Since the flash drive was finally found and Anshin was destroyed, Miss Yan came to her boss to tell about it. The main villain asked to be more attentive to the newcomers whom the organization recruits so that such situations do not recur, and also provided a list of names whose verification was mandatory. As soon as the taste sensations became available to the girl, she immediately decided to try all the dishes that were available to her. This body was beautiful, because the girl could drink and eat anything without getting fat or suffering from rashes, a real dream for any food lover. Jong also loved the drink. When the girl asked why, the young man told one story about how his robotic cat found a mate. And Shin asked her friend not to worry that even his cat is in a relationship and he is not, because soon everything will change for the better. The second step to Miss Wang's heart was dating training. A girl named Elle and Mei Li were chosen as a partner. The young man could not understand what kind of setup this was. Then the girl said that they were killing two birds with one stone. The guy would not only become more experienced, but also improve his relationship with his beloved best friend. Mei quickly understood for what purpose the main character came, because she perfectly understands that she is not particularly interesting to the opposite sex, unlike her friend. Providing information about Miss Wang was Mei's part-time job. She could offer a large amount of data, so she was interested in what exactly the guy wanted to know. Buying all the data about a loved one at once seemed like the most suitable solution, but according to An, it is better to find out everything on your own, receiving only small hints. At this stage, Gao Yi was interested in which bookstore Miss Wang goes to every Wednesday, because having learned this, the young man would be able to see and communicate about books with his beloved. The friend was surprised by such modest interest, but having received the necessary information, the guy was already at the address on the right day, waiting for Miss Wang. The last copy of the book that the girl was interested in was taken by our main character. It was difficult to believe in such a coincidence. It was hard to believe that they really liked books by the same author, and besides, the guy was also able to guess the girl's favorite quote. And Shin's training allowed the protagonist to masterfully hide his own feelings, so he continued to confidently talk about his interest in the girl. Thanks to the fact that it was all covered with sauce as it was in the book, he achieved fairly good results, and then gave her the opportunity to read what she so desired. They agreed that the girl would read the book first, and then give it to the main character so that he could familiarize himself with it. For such generosity, Miss Wang offered to treat her friend to coffee. Watching everything that was happening, Gao Yi's friend suddenly changed her style. Hoping not to reveal her presence to the enemies, she was glad that her advice really worked. Having trusted her student, the beauty decided not to follow the guy, but to enjoy the evening separately, allowing the couple to stay together for some more time. The food seemed a little strange, so the girl's indignation came out. The waiter came over to find out what was the matter. Only Shin herself quickly realized that the lamb kebab she ordered consisted of pork. At that moment, the worker realized that he was facing a real gourmet. At this moment, the girl's attention was no longer on food, because while watching passers-by, she noticed one person who had previously been associated with her past life. Outside the window of the establishment, as if nothing had happened, the scarecrow and his mask were walking. This meant that an evil organization was going to do its business in this area. Noticing that his girlfriend was not around, the young man became very worried, so he decided to dial her number. After a few minutes of waiting, it became clear that her phone was switched off. The guy asked for forgiveness from the girl with whom he was supposed to have coffee. He left under the pretext that his friend felt bad and needed to be picked up. Although their walk was short, it seemed that the young man managed to leave a good impression. Miss Wang thanked Gao Yi for the book. The main character himself initially did not plan such an outcome, but was glad because, thanks to his adaptability, he was able to earn even more trust from his beloved. Previously, he foresaw that something bad might happen, so he installed a beacon in his girlfriend's body so he could know exactly where she was. Her battery died, and by coincidence she ended up among the garbage. Now the car is heading to the landfill, and the guy has an urgent quest. When the garbage truck arrived at the landfill and unloaded the next load, the girl's body was noticed by a local homeless man, who became very interested in the find. Finding an android in their time was a fairly simple task. Many of them worked in the catering industry or as consultants, but not every business could afford them. On the one hand, the old man was glad because the girl turned out to be not real, which means fewer problems. On the other hand, suspicious programs should have been avoided. The situation was critical. The young man hurried the taxi driver as best he could. But the man did not understand where modern youth were constantly rushing, because people were created to enjoy this world. Realizing that he definitely wouldn't make it in time, the main character got out of the car, promising the driver to give him 1 star in the Uber app and also to leave a bad review. There was no choice left, so the young man decided to rent an electric bicycle. In his case, this was the most suitable option. He did not yet know that there really was a reason to rush, because the old man who had picked up the discharged body was already walking back to him, holding a saw in his hands. The critical accuracy was the disappearance of the signal from the girl's body from the map, which meant that something had definitely happened to her. The guy was in a hurry as soon as he could, because he didn't want to lose his advisor and already good friend. Soon the right place was found, because the signal disappeared precisely on the territory of the scavenger's house. Preparing for the worst, the young man began to slowly enter. Next to the old man, he noticed hair of the same color that his girlfriend had before dying. His heart began to beat faster, because Gao Yi thought that she had been taken apart. Of course, the guy felt sorry for Anshin, but when he realized that he could now stop working undercover and stop taking risks altogether, he suddenly became thoughtful. Only the doll that the guy mistook for his mentor was from a clothing store, consisted of a different material, and overall didn't look much like a person. About 30 minutes ago, the old man was about to take apart the girl found in the landfill, but he was stopped by his granddaughter, who wanted a large doll for herself. Since the girl liked her, the man decided not to do anything, leaving the find as a toy since everything was in order within Shin's body. He wanted to return his friend as quickly as possible. But the little girl didn't want to give away such a large and high-quality doll. The guy wasn't going to take it by force. He was even ready to pay for it. Even so, the old man was not going to agree to sell the find. His main goal was the good behavior of his granddaughter, as well as her joy. Therefore, if the guy could offer something else, some toy that the girl liked as well as the doll, then they could exchange. After a few more tens of minutes, the main character returned with a special toy, for which he finally managed to exchange on Shin. The old man advised the young man to take care of his personal life and find a real-life partner, and not resort to such decisions. Despite all the problems that the girl caused, in fact, the main character did not plan to leave her. He wanted to continue to have fun with her, work undercover and all that. On the way home, they came across a beautiful dog who was definitely not too happy to see guests. Code Red was announced quickly, and since the guy was alone, running away turned out to be the best solution. The dog was a little surprised by this reaction because he just wanted to play with people. At the same moment, something strange was happening nearby. A man under the influence of paradise began to behave strangely. He greatly frightened the girl, who at that moment happened to be nearby. She asked him not to leave because she was afraid that he might harm other people. But this did not bother the man, whose consciousness was absorbed by the drug. He ordered his friend to quickly move away from the door. And when she didn't agree, he decided to show her a few techniques that he learned at karate school. At that moment, the beauty realized that she was unlikely to get out of this scrape alive. Then we are moved forward about a day. The work of infiltrating the gang continued to go on. They deliberately waited some time so that the decision to take up the work seemed logical. The book's self-improvement of an actor and many other materials studied did not provide guarantees, but they allowed the young man to feel more confident. In this image, he looked like an ordinary, modest fellow who does not harm anyone and always tries to avoid conflicts, only the guy has to restrain his emotions. Many wanted Gao Yi to join them at the table, because as soon as he put on a wig and made a different facial expression, he immediately became much more attractive. Soon it was possible to meet with Brother Xiang, of course, not without the help of the local inhabitants. The man himself was having a great time with a glass in his hand. He knew that sooner or later the main character would return, because those who are the same in nature are always attracted to each other. The first thing Brother Xiang decided to bribe the main character with was the beauties of his bar. There were so many attractive girls here that Gao Yi's eyes even ran wild. One of the tasks as a security guard will be to protect local workers and ordinary girls from various influences from not entirely sane people. The only rule that must be followed is that you cannot occupy the space between them. It belongs to Yang Zi. The young man wanted to see the boss, but according to Brother Xiang, she was not here now. The guy threw his head higher. It seemed strange, but his excuse was a stiff neck, but in fact there was a small camera in his nose. Through it, the girl monitored the situation, although she had to do a rather strange action to provide her partner with such an opportunity. The situation was getting out of control. Of course, the guy wanted to be as cool and popular as Joni Sins, but such attention turned out to be a difficult burden, so he went to the toilet to ask for advice. His girlfriend did not miss the opportunity to laugh at the main character, because his popularity really broke records, all definitely thanks to her training. After giving some instructions, the girl asked the guy to return to the mission. He couldn't seem suspicious on the first day. You should always pay attention to the role you play. At least that's what his mentor thought, but staying calm was harder than it seemed. Curious and fight-loving gangster, you must have the right eyes. Lines from the manual that the guy kept repeating to himself. The opportunity to prove himself appeared quickly enough. Literally in the very first hour of work, an eccentric appeared who was too rude to the local workers. Yan also noticed the new bouncer Tsu. She seemed suspicious of his interference in business on the spot. It looked too artificial. The guy also aroused suspicion among his superiors, so one of the heads of the organization ordered Scarecrow to check his biography so that they could be calm. In their free time, the guards hung out near the bar playing card games, usually poker. Among the local inhabitants were those for whom he and An Shin performed a performance. Colleagues did not like to lose, but the young man played cards very well, so he was very popular as an opponent. Sister Yan forced him to interrupt the game because she wanted to see the newcomer in her office, as one of the waitresses informed him about. Just in case, the lady decided to make sure that she had called the right person, so she asked again whether Elle and Gao Yi were really standing in front of her. As soon as the guy confirmed this, the guard standing motionless behind him, like a statue from Level Up alone, made their presence felt. Training in Taekwondo was very successful, so the young man's body responded on its own. He even managed to throw off the bodyguard. But on the other side stood the same giant. Confronting two enemies at once was too difficult a task for the main character, so he still missed a couple of blows. Sister Yan checked all the information about the young man in advance. His words were indeed confirmed, because according to available data, he had recently been fired due to a fight. We are brought back to tell how this is even possible. Even at the stage of preparation for the plan, his mentor suggested breaking the law for a good cause. The young man hacked the unified file system of their country and then replaced his data with previously prepared ones. This will allow him to create an alibi. When faced with troubles, according to Anshin herself, the first thing you need to do is calm down and think with your head. This was especially important for undercover agents. The guy wasn't going to do anything stupid and attack someone if he wasn't bothered in the first place. He was ready to leave the organization if Yansu suspects him of something, because he could have found profitable work for his fists elsewhere. The boss liked this kind of trip. She respected those who prove something not with words but with deeds, as long as the guy's merits justify his being here. Even though the guy seemed collected and unshakable in appearance, his heart inside was beating with incredible force. It seemed to him as if he was about to lose consciousness from excitement. Zhang and Anshin, who were watching what was happening through a small camera, were also very scared, because it was the main character who was in charge of keeping them. Meanwhile, the police continued to investigate the distributor and manufacturer of the drug Paradise. They managed to obtain new information, but this was not enough. This time they became aware of a car that was delivering the drug. Organizing a raid on it turned out to be not such a difficult task. The police rushed to the car because they wanted to detain the intruders. They only managed to catch a few criminals. For the sake of the investigation and the integrity of the investigation, it was impossible to cause even minimal harm to the detainees. But they did not yet know that there was still a person inside the car. Things smelled like a fry. The driver pressed the gas pedal to the floor, ramming the two nearest police cars, but the specialists did not plan to lag behind, so they quickly came to readiness. At the wheel was the Scarecrow, or as the police called him, the Umbrella Man, for his strange way of walking in any weather with a large, dark umbrella. The chase continued, but in the end, Zhou Fei managed to catch up with the Scarecrow. He pointed a gun at him and demanded that he obey the law. They stood on the roof of the building. If there was anywhere to run, then only down. The guy really didn't want to injure the criminal because this would be a rather controversial decision in such a situation. When the attacker finally tried to jump, a well-aimed shot from a policeman stopped him halfway, and he asked him not to do anything stupid, because the next shot would be more successful. Despite all the threats, the Scarecrow stood on the edge of the roof. In his hands, there was a small suitcase with money, as well as that same umbrella. Even though the man jumped off, it did not mean that the criminal had accepted his fate. Zhou Fei immediately realized this, so he began to run towards the bad guy. After jumping off, a member of the organization thanked the police officer for the hard work he does every day, so that their city can sleep peacefully. Getting down was not such a difficult task, because in fact the Scarecrow modified his umbrella so that it could support the weight of a human body. At the same time, during his first working day at the bar, the guy was waiting on the street. He was thinking about how he could make Yan fall in love with him too. When a guy with a wound unexpectedly landed from the sky, the young man was a little scared, but he immediately understood what was happening, because he saw a black umbrella in the hands of a strange man. Following the criminal, his personal hound came out. Zhou Fei raised his ID above his head and demanded everyone to remain in their places so that the police could inspect everyone. Hearing a familiar voice, the beauty went outside to greet the policeman. They already knew each other because their bar continued to be suspected for several months. The guardian of the law asked to help him identify the criminals, but the girl told him about their profitability. The bar could continue to operate. The groundless accusations from Zhou Fei damaged the reputation of the small bar. They were not doing too well, but Yanzi assured that they would never sell drugs. Regardless of the owner's words, the policeman was going to conduct an inspection. He did not need to have extensive work experience to sense something was wrong. Gao Yi himself hid in the toilet to get in touch with his girlfriend again. He hoped that the girl's acquaintance would catch the guy with the umbrella, and his operation could be completed. Only if this really happens, everything will be the other way around, because the young man will be given an excellent opportunity to show himself and make his way to the very top of the organization. But there was a more reliable plan, of course, and Shin was not such a cool manipulator, but she always had a couple of backup plans hidden up her sleeve. The girl's idea was to save the villain with the umbrella from persecution and thus curry favor with the management. Saving this man was quite important because he was one of the main ones in the branch led by Yan Su, which means that his loss, although it hit the syndicate hard, will not completely solve the problem. But if the guy can get to the deepest roots of the organization, he can destroy it completely. So having set priorities, it became obvious which option to choose. Perhaps this can also have an impact on Sister Yan's heart. If the heroic deeds of the young man rain down on her one after another, then she will definitely not be able to stay away. When Gao Yi finally finished talking to his partner, he walked out of the booth and heard the conversations of the police who had almost reached this part of the building. Finding the man with the umbrella turned out to be not such a big problem. The blood dripping from the ceiling made it clear that the intruder was in the ventilation above. Remembering the words of his partner, and also noticing the dog that was already coming around the corner, the young man began to think about how he could help his colleague out of this predicament. The Scarecrow himself also understood that his fate depended on the main character, because if he betrayed him, then not only he himself would have problems, but also Sister Yan. The guy may not have been the smartest, but thanks to his experience in strategy games, he could easily find a way out of even a difficult situation. The option that the guy chose allowed him to deceive the dog. He took a bottle of cherry juice that was standing nearby and pretended to accidentally drop it. A strange noise attracted the attention of the policeman, but it did not arouse suspicion, since the situation was quite ordinary, especially considering that the dog was walking around the premises. Having sniffed the place where the bottle fell, the dog could not notice the traces of the man with the umbrella, so the main character did an excellent job. The policeman asked the main character not to wander around the premises because they were conducting an inspection, which means the guy shouldn't add unnecessary problems to them. According to experts, Umbrella was hiding within the bar, so they left people at the entrance and searched for him throughout the building. Soon, two identically dressed guys appeared in front of Zhou Fei. They were supposed to be bait. The style of the criminal with an umbrella was too noticeable. They were always ready for an emergency situation. There were two suspects at once, which means only one of them is real. The investigator quickly divided his people into two teams and went in pursuit. The real umbrella was hiding in the ventilation all this time. The fakes attracted a lot of attention to themselves, allowing the original to escape unhindered. Sister Yan ordered her bodyguards to help Scarecrow escape. The law enforcement officers bought into their trick, which means there should be no more problems. Even though Zhou Fei was still young, his instincts were good. One could even call him a witcher, because he knew how to catch intruders perfectly. He quickly realized that there was no real one among everyone, so he ordered to stop. As soon as the police stopped the pursuit, the clone stopped behind him. Our main character acted as bait when the cops were able to make sure that the umbrella caught was fake. It was too late to catch up with the real one. The policeman ran out into the street and saw a car moving away. It just drove away, so there was a real villain inside. In any case, they left the police in a bad mood because they failed to catch someone important from the syndicate again. The anger gradually became stronger. The policeman reminded himself of the promise he made to his late girlfriend. He would definitely catch all the criminals from this group. Gao Yi himself came to his boss. He was interested in whether Brother Umbrella managed to escape from persecution. The girl confirmed this and praised the newcomer for his resourcefulness. The guy intervened in the capture to protect his older comrade, even though he only played a role in this performance. But he did not think about the fact that he would be arrested himself. And so it happened. Zhou Fei insisted that the young guard quickly go with him to the police station because they had certain questions for him. Even though the young man just ended up at the police station, he managed to make a talkative friend quickly enough. He ended up here because he stole someone's car for fun. The main thing that interested the boy was whether he needed to prepare for something more serious than an interrogation, since he had never been to the police. But, according to his new acquaintance, the police are gentle with everyone who is not involved in the sale or production of drugs like Paradise. The main character could not hide his sadness, because in essence he defended with his actions one of those who was involved in this. The new acquaintance soon had to leave this place to pass the time. He decided to go to bed. Besides, Gao Yi himself was not particularly talkative. His cat, led by An Xin, came to rescue the guy. He easily climbed into the small window, and then meowed quietly to greet the young man. A few moments later, the pet's collar began broadcasting live video of a friend who continued to watch what was happening through a camera in her nose. But the girl couldn't say anything, because there was a listening device on the young man's collar. He noticed it only after An Xin pointed it out. Yan Su added him at the moment when she promised the main character that he would not be thrown into the police but would find a person who would help him get out of there. It was necessary to come up with a logical reason for too long silence. Looking at his fellow sufferer, the guy decided to feign sleepiness. To make it even more convincing, he placed the device directly on the chest of a young car thief who was clearly inspired by the Grand Theft Auto V. After catching his breath a little, Gao Yi was ready to come up with a plan to escape. Only the former investigator said that if he really did this, he would be seriously arrested. Sister Yan installed a bug on him to check whether the main character was working with investigator Zhou Fei or not. Even if he had already been checked before, additional confidence in something did not harm anyone. If during the interrogation the young man does not accept responsibility, then no one will be able to do anything with him. So there was definitely no point in despairing and trying to escape. Since someone was already approaching the camera, the young man's friend stopped the broadcast. The cat also hurried away, wishing his owner good luck in parting. Having returned the bug to its place, the guy began to wait for his guests because the most interesting thing of the day awaited him ahead. As expected, Zhou Fei himself came directly to the interrogation. He hoped to get information about the crime syndicate because he was sure that the protagonist belonged to it. The first thing the police did was take the car thief out. He hardly posed any serious danger, and besides, they would soon come for him. Now the big game began. The fight was expected to be very difficult because the investigation did not have any significant evidence against the boy. Before conducting the interrogation, the police officer handed the young man a notice of the rights and responsibilities of criminal suspects. Reading the paper would not have taken much time, but the young man continued to pull it, hoping that someone from the organization would soon appear to pull him out. According to the investigator himself, if the guy honestly admits to the violation, then his punishment will not be so severe. Playing for time and playing the fool, the main principles of which the young man adhered to, he read about this in one of the books on acting. When the policeman hoped that he would still receive a confession, the guy deftly slipped away from this topic, moving on to some stupid or even funny facts. To confuse the matter even more, this is what Zhou Fei tried to avoid most of all. But the behavior of the protagonist only complicated the process. He wanted to find out why to help Umbrella escape. True, Gao Yi himself did not admit that he knew someone who constantly moves with a black umbrella and also walks around with a stupid mask. The guy did an excellent job of dodging any question, each time increasing the investigator's anger and impatience. At one point, he even grabbed him by the collar. Fei's colleague came and said that a first-class lawyer had come to their station and wanted to take away the main character. They could no longer hold him. Hearing the whole conversation, Yansu began to doubt a little. Perhaps his behavior confirmed some of her assumptions. The checkmark on the guy's photograph spoke of this. Although there was a cross on other workers' cards, so far it was difficult to say what this mark meant. After leaving the police station, the guy could not hide his surprise. He thought that he would stay there forever because the lawyer from the organization did not come and did not come. As soon as he turned around and looked around, he noticed the same boy who was taken away a few minutes before he himself came out. As it turned out, this guy's sister, about whom he talked so much, was Che Wanwan, better known as Miss Wang. The girl was sulking at her stupid brother, because this was not the first time she had taken him away. Gao Yi's surprise knew no bounds. He was very worried that the girl would be able to recognize him by his face. Meeting Wanwan at the police station was a bad outcome this time. But after some time, the young man noticed that the girl treated him like a stranger. She was not entirely happy with how her brother was making friends, but did not consider the captured protagonist bad. The girl scolded her stupid brother, but he was engaged in burglary and theft of car parts in order to get money. He did not want to borrow from his sister. Despite the pretentious speech, the young man could not afford to pay for a taxi from the police house to Walmart, and then their house, so he asked his older sister for help. The main character was offered company, but he wanted to refuse because this could destroy his entire cover and, as a result, destroy the entire plan. The mechanic definitely liked the older brother, so he hoped that he and his sister would start dating. After all, the dark side of the main character looked quite impressive. While they were riding in a taxi, a conversation arose between the relatives about his real identity. The brother was interested in how the guy with whom they had seen several times was doing. The photo of the young man was found in the girl's phone quite quickly, and after taking a closer look at their traveling companion, brother Wanwan was convinced that this guy was a level more attractive. The young man didn't know that the person in the photo and the one sitting next to him were the same person, so he continued to confuse his older sister with various strange questions. The young man's home now seemed like a real paradise. He had not been inside for a long time, so he had even forgotten how comfortable it was there. The mood quickly lifted as soon as the young man took a shower and changed into clothes that were more familiar to him. Besides, Anshin promised him a reward for a brilliantly completed mission. It was funny for the girl to watch how her partner reacted to Zhou Fei's terrifying gaze. He only treats criminals this way, especially those who sell drugs. As a special reward, the main character and his beloved cat Jing received mango soup. Last time they liked it so much that now the girl often has to cook it. While eating, the main character talked about how he met Miss Wang, but the girl thought it strange because today was Chinese New Year. Then the guy talked about Shi Lu, her brother, with whom they discussed Genshin Impact, while they had nothing to do. The boy also said that Gao Yi was very handsome and women's outfits suited him. As soon as she imagined this, Anshin began to regret it, because while she had the opportunity, she had to force the guy to disguise himself as a girl. The guy really worked hard, so he deserves a little rest. The girl suggested that he think about how to move forward in his relationship with his beloved. While Gao Yi and her cat were playing board games, the girl was talking about what steps could be taken in the situation the guy was in. According to the Taekwondo master, in battle, using the same technique is too ineffective. She believed that in the case of girls, the same principle applies. To test how willing the guy was to continue, the girl wanted to know what an ideal date looked like for Gao Yi. Without thinking twice, the young man replied that he would happily spend it at home, eating delicious food and enjoying watching his favorite films. But it was too typical and predictable, so most likely, if the young man had a chance to spend the day at home with his beloved, he would not be able to impress her. As a girl, Anshin believed that love is not about gifts or surprises, but about some new sensations and impressions, because they allow you to get the most unique emotions. A friend could say the same about romance, because if it's something ordinary, then it doesn't work so effectively. Freshness was needed in this matter. Today was the very day when the main character really thought about how he could hit on a girl, and he even had a good idea. The next day, the guy put on Dazai's coat from the anime The Greatest of Stray Dogs. He was waiting for Miss Wang, because he had a great idea for spending time together. The idea for a date was quite innovative, so he couldn't answer the girl where they would go today, at least not yet. This was his special kind of romance. They had to use a special application to navigate to random places in the city and complete tasks. The first place the couple went was Jinshin Park. City transport was an excellent place where the main character could show himself as a true gentleman. They had several tasks. The first was to feed the dogs. The girl got along well with the one she found, but the main character had some difficulties. The next quest was bursting the balloon. Finding it was not so difficult, but bursting it, because not only Wanwan was afraid of loud sounds. They walked for a bit, and then reached a high point from where they could clearly see the city. The task asked them to turn off their phones so that they could enjoy the magic of nature. The girl liked to spend time in this place. At this time there were a lot of fireflies, although their life expectancy is only 2 years. Towards the end of their lives they will be able to shine. This is so unusual, because people, on the contrary, begin to shine more and more dimmer as they age. Even though these fireflies only have a week or two to live, they are still working hard to bloom and then find their other half. The opportunity to hug your loved ones in their last moments is what the main character considered a real treasure. The atmosphere was quite romantic. Only the girl was frozen. The guy shared his coat so that his beloved would not catch a cold, although she did not see a problem in this, even if she appreciated the care. And Shin, who was watching everything, was surprised because everything went more than smoothly. It was even strange. But she bet that she was simply too good an expert in love affairs. The joy did not last long because nearby she noticed a girl from the syndicate, her red-pink hair with 2 ponytails, a distinctive sign that cannot be confused with anything. Even though the girl did not directly threaten the main character, Shin considered it her duty as a former investigator to follow her. The beauty wanted to go into some building, but she was not allowed in. Then the guards did not yet know how serious a mistake they had made. As soon as one of the men tried to stop her, the little girl immediately sent the huge man flying, as if he were some kind of toy. The second guard also could not hold out for long. The girl was a more serious opponent than several animatronics in the pizzeria. Our Shin quietly made her way behind her. She tried to pass unnoticed, but one of the guards who remained conscious did not want to let her through. She quickly proved that this was the man's second mistake of the evening. Leaving a few bumps to the guard as a farewell, the blonde went into the building. The employees keeping order inside could not understand how a little girl could get into the building. They assumed that their colleagues had left their posts again, the beauty's company for so long, because she again knocked out her opponents with just 1 or 2 blows. The second guy, who had not yet been knocked out, quickly realized that it was not worth underestimating the girl just because of her young appearance. so he immediately tried to pull the blade out of its sheath. But the baby's speed was too high, so she was able to prevent even such a quick action, incapacitating all the personnel responsible for the protection. The goal of the organization at the moment was promotion to the major leagues. For this, they gathered the most influential people and subjugated them to their will. This time their target was Shen Jingbing. The blacklist of the Tsutenkaku organization included only 10 positions, until Anshin could not guess the intentions of the opponents. Meanwhile, the guy continued to enjoy his date, even though he acted like a real man. Admitting that he was also cold was too shameful. The influential businessman was not going to go with strange Lo Li, who was able to kill all his personal guards, but he still believed that he had some chance against her. It all ended quite quickly. After a few minutes, the girl left the building with a suitcase in her hands, where they hid Shen Jingbing from prying eyes. The girl's actions spoke of her experience because when she left the building, several dozen armed bodyguards ran up to its entrance. Despite her incredible strength, the girl was very fond of everything sweet and cute. She was very sad if she carelessly damaged things that were important to her. That is why, even while completing tasks, she did not deny herself the opportunity to enjoy some dishes along the way. Even though Shin's stealth skills were pumped to the limit, the sweet girl still managed to detect her presence. The girl offered the spy to treat herself to the food that she had bought a few minutes ago. She definitely shouldn't have refused the offer, because the beauty took the last 2 strawberry cakes. The lolly girl quickly enough and allowed her to leave now precisely because there were no surveillance cameras in this place. No one knows anything if a murder happens here. However, before they start fighting, the little girl wanted to know why the stranger was following her. If the blonde didn't want to give reasons, then the member of the organization would definitely not let her go. All that Shin was interested in at this moment was the motive with which the little girl kidnapped that influential person. Being nosy can be dangerous, especially for police officers, who were very disliked by everyone who was in criminal gangs. There was little chance of winning. It is not difficult for a martial artist to understand the difference in strength, so the blonde decided to take the first step, delivering an unexpected blow. The little girl was surprised. Not many who saw her strength dared to take the first step in the battle. Now she was very interested in finding out who Shin really was. Answering questions was not part of the former investigators' plans. The fight gradually began to become more and more intense. No one wanted to give in this fight. Every minute of the battle became more and more interesting for the girl with the lollipop. She was always looking for a battle with a strong opponent. With 78% battery left, fighting to the limit was too risky an idea, because if she lost or couldn't win until the end of the charge, then her secret might be revealed. Suddenly it started to rain. This was a bad sign, because the girl's body was not completely sealed, which means that moisture could cause damage to spare parts and internal mechanisms. Rain during a date was a romantic event, but the young man was hardly happy about it. He didn't have a jacket, and it was only getting colder. She and Wanwan quickly found where they could take shelter from the bad weather. This moment was quite touching, because when they first met, it was also raining. Only now the main character's thoughts were not at all about his beloved. He was worried about his robot girlfriend, because he didn't know whether she would be able to return home after the rain. The battle continued. The system suggested an option that could solve the problem. If rainwater gets into the body, you need to turn off the power as soon as possible. Only additional moisture gave Shin an advantage, because some liquids are excellent conductors of electricity, so the girl introduced the member of the organization to the punishment of Zeus. After which she hurried to turn off the power, hoping that this time the main character would come to her rescue again, saving her from the hands of a flea dealer, or maybe some other strange person. Gao Yi himself didn't mind spending all his free time with Miss Wang, but he also couldn't help but worry about his friend. After all, he made progress in his love affairs precisely because of her. He took care of such unexpected situations, so he installed several useful applications on his smartphone, one of which allowed him to monitor the status of Jiang Jiang and Anshin. The young man wanted to end their meeting as soon as possible in order to go to the rescue of his friend, because he noticed that her indicator was glowing red. But Wanwan was worried because the guy was behaving strangely. If he leaves right now this time, Wanwan will definitely think that he doesn't want to date her, so the protagonist will have to wait first. There was really something wrong with the young man. Miss Wang noticed this, but decided not to make his life difficult, because apparently it was really important since he had changed so much. To make amends for such an abrupt end to their date, the guy called a taxi and was going to take his beloved straight to her house. The car arrived quickly enough. Even though it was already almost deep night outside, the main character thanked the driver for this. The taxi driver asked not to thank him because of trifles, because in fact he has several businesses, and he does transportation for the soul. The main character didn't mind believing this nonsense as long as the man drove faster, because if the girl lay in the rain for too long, she might be impossible to repair. After saying goodbye to Wanwan, the guy asked not to worry about the coat. The girl could return it later when they went for a walk again. It was very alarming because of Enshin's condition. She really caused the boy a lot of problems. He only accepted an apology in the form of mango soup. Finding the right place turned out to be quite difficult. The girl fell not far from the protected area, so it was not possible to go everywhere. Her body sparkled, but even so, the guy already knew how to behave in such situations, so he prepared the necessary equipment. So much water got inside, the guy hoped that everything was fine with the motherboard, otherwise he would have to do a major repair. Soon the baby also woke up. Whether that discharge was a dirty trick of this woman, or they were struck by lightning and they both could not move, it was impossible to say for sure. But even in this state, she remembered how the girl was taken somewhere by a strange man with blue hair. Getting home turned out to be quite a quest. The guy asked Zhang Jiang to quickly bring a hairdryer. They needed to put the robot's body in rice and then dry it for a long time. With iPhones, at least it worked. The cat quickly realized that things were serious, so he prepared everything necessary. In fact, Anshin was his robot relative, so he was doubly worried about her. The girl did not react. Even after the young man inserted the charger into the socket, he was worried because his girlfriend's personality might no longer exist. The beauty suddenly opened her eyes, only they were different from those that the young man usually saw. Now she reacted very angrily and aggressively, trying to harm her friend. Since the girl's mood this time turned out to be much more serious, she showed much more strength than during their training battles. Even Zhang Jiang strongly insisted that Enshin stop bullying the main character, because after that he would not buy them fish. After these words, the girl let go of the young man's neck and began to talk about how she was a cute little cat, while simultaneously destroying Jiang's food supplies. Such changes indicated that letting a friend out of the house on rainy days was not a good idea. If next time they come across an animal more ferocious than a cat, then all hell breaks loose. Anne's behavior changed a lot. She became kinder and more playful. She wanted the main character to devote time not only to his cat Jiang, but also to her. She jumped around the apartment for some time, considering herself a real zombie, and then fell on her face and froze. Deadly silence reigned in Gao Yi's house. When the girl finally returned to normal, she did not understand why the main character and his cat huddled in a corner in horror, and did not understand what to do in this situation. She wanted to give a negative review to his friend's company, because in their modern world, people make even smartphones waterproof. But they couldn't assemble a robot using this principle. More importantly, she managed to save part of the fight against that little girl. She was involved in the death of her father, so she remembered that pink-red hair forever. Let her appearance not deceive the main character. It seems to him that she is innocent, but she killed more people than some Kira from the Death Note. Gao Yi were this little girl's opponent. Holding out for at least 5 to 10 seconds would be the greatest achievement in his life. Meanwhile, Wanwan finally returned home. Her brother was interested in how the date went, but the girl did not want to tell because it was none of his business. But for him it was really important, because before his older sister marries someone, he must evaluate the candidate. He also had a gift for his beloved sister, who works hard so that the two of them could not deny themselves anything. She doubted that this thing was bought with honest money, because she knew what her brother did, but he promised to soon find a menial job and give the girl the opportunity to live for her own pleasure. Now he was just doing something that could allow them to live to the fullest, forgetting about any work. He planned and will now go about his business. The girl asked him not to get him into any trouble and not to return home in the morning. Wanwan's friend appreciated how beautiful his friend's sister really was and wanted to take a walk with her, but the boy made it clear that no one from his circle should approach her. The two of them were heading to the club. This time, this strange guy was offering a much more profitable deal. 1 or 2 times would be enough to buy a used car. The idea was simple. You had to trade something that was not available in any other place, an exclusive supplement that increased various indicators. Even though Ziael was often caught by the police, he was far from stupid and knew what he was talking about. I didn't want to get involved with something like that. But besides the money for the boy, there was another lever of pressure. The girl working as a waitress in this bar was to his liking. Only the guy, it seems, got himself into these problems. He promised to help his sister, so he couldn't stop right now. Meanwhile, the baby returned to her boss. He was not very happy, because completing the mission took too much time. Then the girl told about the problems that had arisen to a man who really wanted to look like Andrew Tate, but he was far from that level. Shen Jingbing, who had been kept in a suitcase all this time, was finally able to get out. The boss asked him not to worry about anything, because he was called to cooperate. The man's cargo company was perfect for selling their goods, as well as moving them, so having such an ally was not only profitable, but also simply convenient. Continuing to try to achieve liberation, Shen Jingbing was quite rude to the head of the group, but they had a solution even for those who did not want to cooperate. The so-called paradise was not a special solution that was taken in capsules or, for example, administered using an injector. It was an ordinary carbonated drink. Soon the main character returned to this bar. He was ready to continue working there, but he was alarmed by the fact that he noticed his beloved's younger brother here. The young man wanted to go to work, but while his brother Xiang forbade him to do this, there was a more important issue that needed to be discussed with his superiors. They had a custom in the bar. Many of the locals were taken to police stations, so to get rid of bad luck, they would step over the brazier. The young man liked the utensils, so he asked not to throw them away if, in case of emergency, they no longer needed them. He sat down at one of the bar stools and began to drink a delicious, intoxicating drink. He was glad to see Sister Yan, not forgetting to thank her for her help with the police. But the beauty asked not to worry about it, because the young man helped her rescue Umbrella from a difficult situation, which means they are even. Just before going downstairs after Brother Xian, the girl invited the guy to try a signature cocktail. She mixed drinks perfectly. The skill was visible even to the naked eye. The girl rotated the shaker as if she were Michael Jordan on the basketball court. The umbrella was able to escape, which means that the additional bonus in the form of a special cocktail, especially for the main character, was just a small bonus. After some time, the guy shared his story with Anshin. He said that he was treated to a cocktail, and then he would be entrusted with an important mission. The fact that one of the key figures of the syndicate prepares drinks for the main character personally was a good call, which means they didn't help Umbrella that time in vain. The only thing that confused Anshin was that during her work, no one treated anyone to any drinks. It was quite strange. Gao Yi's good mood turned out to be so. The durability of the drink was quite high. He promised to bring it next time for his girlfriend to evaluate. Sister Yan had previously worked as a bartender, but no one knows for what reason she decided to stop doing this. Her talent was obvious. Yan's fingerprint Zhu, so that later they could open her safe and get the names from that list. Completing this task was not so difficult, especially considering that the girl walked without gloves, which meant she left marks on every surface she touched. The next morning turned out to be quite difficult for the brother of the protagonist's beloved girl. His head was pounding and his body was aching. His sister was worried about him, because the boy didn't even remember how exactly he ended up at home after yesterday's rest. It could hardly be called an ordinary rest. The girl asked him not to abuse his youth too much, because all his decisions would later reveal themselves and he would have to suffer a lot from his naivety. The guy was glad that he had such a caring sister who cooked and cleaned, but as soon as he took one bite, his body began to reject food. He could not understand what exactly was happening, but symptoms of oversaturation with paradise gradually began to appear. This was a critical point. At the same time, the bar guards were all playing board games together. The guys were putting together strong combinations, but the main character always managed to achieve more points. His colleagues did not believe that it was possible to win so often, and without using any prohibited techniques. He is a real cheater in the world of card competitions. When Sister Yan went somewhere, the young man realized that now was the best time to get the list. Everything should have gone smoothly, because he had a partner. Zhang was the key figure in the plan, but instead of preparing, he showed the Bitsuha to other cats, and also attracted the attention of human girls. Although he could not complain about it because he felt comfortable in the arms of people, so he continued to drown in this ocean of pleasure. The main character was proud of the cat, who, having won the heart of one, immediately went to conquer others. Such a great creature should be enough for everyone. As soon as the young man gave a sound signal, his battle cat was able to get through the small hole. He was a real ninja. Finding the right safe was also not much of a problem. It stood out from the rest of the structures in the room. There were only a few steps left. The cat was much more dexterous and graceful. Not many could compare with him, because Jiang knew how to skillfully bypass tracking systems. The device, previously prepared by its owner, was perfect for breaking locks with a lock that depended on biometrics. The necessary information was obtained very quickly. They were not going to take the sheet of paper with them. It was enough to just show the list through the camera, and Anshin would copy it. Among all the valuables inside the vault, the guys also noticed a strange photo that definitely showed Sister Yan. It was not possible to look at everything in more detail, because behind the young man, a strange silhouette appeared out of nowhere and called out to Brother Gao. But turning around, the main character realized that he had nothing to worry about. The one who practically destroyed his brilliant plan was not himself, and was also very tired after the party. The guy tried to direct his colleague to the right place while he was solving the problem with the list. Photography really provided them with new opportunities. Anshin was already studying the list. Many of the names listed there were familiar to her, but why all this was necessary, she could not yet understand. The main character also took part in the reflections. The only thing that bothered him was how different positions and areas the specialists on the list occupied. None of these people were in any way connected with the organization. They practically never crossed paths anywhere, not to mention working together on any project. But as she continued to peer at the names and company names written next to them, the girl suddenly realized a very frightening thing. These people were not trying to take anyone else into their central circle. They were going to subjugate companies from different fields in order to more effectively distribute paradise. For example, one of the participants in this blacklist was the director of a large company involved in the control of one of the components of the drug. In other words, he could resolve the supply issue. The previously kidnapped businessman built his business in the field of transport, which means that they could transport their goods to different countries. It was a real spider's net that caught anyone unwary and then never let him out again, forcing him to bring in more and more income. The drug was indeed very dangerous. It was not only addictive, but also deprived the victim of any ability to resist. The one who found himself in this trap, even with the help of other people, could not get out of it, and at one moment, real madness overtook him. The problem was that it was not possible to track all contacts, but any method ultimately led to this state. The cat was praised most of all for his merits because he did an excellent job, obtaining not only the blacklist, but also making several new acquaintances among the yard cats. The girl continued to play with her furry pet, talking about what their next step should be after all. Now the cost of a mistake was much higher than before. The guy wanted to know what was affecting him, because doing undercover missions was now even starting to look good. He felt like he was in some kind of spy action movie. But now what the boy had to worry about was the photo of Yinzi, because if they could solve this mystery, they would have a serious advantage in this battle. The girl also believed that thanks to the efforts of the main character, they were ready to move on to more serious measures. The only problem was that there was too much work. But it was necessary to start somewhere, so the cat was all for it. Only he wanted to receive not only strokes on the belly, but also a real fish for completed missions. Even though Gao had finally gained experience and even began to resemble a real Gopnik, he did not quite understand how he could find out this information. The girl herself also had doubts, because any wrong step could lead to the collapse of the entire operation, and this could not be allowed. Then the girl asked the guy to do everything in order to get at least some information about the man from the photo. Perhaps he is Sister Yan's weak point. Unexpectedly, Jian jumped out of his seat. He ran to the TV, trying to draw the guy's attention to something important. As soon as Anshin turned her gaze to the screen, she saw a news report about her. As well as the clinic where the transfer of consciousness was carried out, her body was going to be cremated. This news was shocking, but she didn't want to leave it like that, so she took emergency measures, contacting Professor Chen. A man, as if nothing had happened, was spending time with his young wife when he saw a message from his seemingly dead patient. In fact, the girl was more alive than anyone else alive. She and the main character met with a brilliant scientist to prove that they were not lying. Even seeing the completely alive Shin in front of him, the professor could not understand how this could be realized. Then the main character, almost a billionaire, genius, and philanthropist, came into play. The girl also released projections of herself from her eyes, forcing the hologram to dance various popular moves from Fortnite. Chen to face a genius like himself, but he was angry because the guy managed to achieve great results. The girls watching this could not understand whether these two were real mad scientists or just boys fighting for the next toy in the sandbox. In any case, they agreed with the professor to receive all kinds of support from him, and the main character, in turn, would have to send a copy of the code. Meanwhile, Zhou Fei arrived at the hospital. He could not allow his precious girlfriend's body to be destroyed so quickly. But no matter how loudly the guy shouted, the specialists were not going to respond to his requests, causing the policeman to become disillusioned with his life. To prevent anyone from committing a rash act was the purpose of Professor Chen's appearance in the hospital. He also ordered to cancel the cremation of the girl's body. Instead, it should be transported to a more suitable place where it can be stored until the right moment, after which they may be able to return the girl's consciousness back. Zhou Fei thanked the specialist for solving the problem with Shin's body, but the doctor had his own reasons for this, so he did not tell the whole truth. Instead, the disguised protagonist ran into a policeman on the street and gave him a message with some names from the list. When Zhou Fei tried to catch up with the strange guy, there was no one around the corner, so he could only wonder who could be behind this. At the same time, the main character and his girlfriend stood next to Inshin's body. The guy greeted her, because this was the first time they saw each other in person. Such trolling seemed strange to the girl, but they agreed to celebrate their victory by watching movies and eating combo sets from McDonald's. The guy was not an expert in everything, so he could not guarantee that they would be able to return the girl's body, but despair was definitely not the best decision. Understanding this better than anyone, Inshin hoped to complete her goal. She was ready to do this even if she spent her entire future life in this plastic body. Next, we are taken to the bar. The same girl who poured Brother Wanwan a drink was surprised to see him again so early. As it turned out, paradise is soluble tablets, not the liquid itself. The young man's mouth was drooling as if he were infected with rabies. It was a little scary, but at the same time it showed how dependent he had become. He wanted to get supplements because he could no longer eat anything else. Any food or even tea made him vomit, making him feel terribly tired. Only the cost of the drug turned out to be too high. The guy couldn't afford it with the current budget, so he could only ask his friend for help. The girl would have been happy to give in, but she also needed money to survive, so this was not a suitable condition. When she finally managed to get the required amount from Lei, she was very pleased because he literally gave up all his savings for one glass. She reveled in the power that her father never dreamed of, so she wanted to carry out a similar scheme further, only with wealthier clients. Meanwhile, the guy continued to work 2 jobs. He often had to be in the company of unpleasant people, but still this had its advantages. Behind everything that is happening, as if for some the drama was watched by Inshin, she watched through a small camera every working day of her friend. But no one around him even gave any clues as to who that mysterious man in the photo could be. She also hoped that the intervention of Zhou Fei could help figure this out, because he had received an excellent clue and would be able to untie the ball of thread by pulling its end. The main character was thinking about who he could ask about Sister Yan's past. Hardly anyone would dare to reveal such information to a newcomer. It was quite loud at the police station because the tip helped to obtain valuable information about other people. Law enforcement agencies worked as planned by Gao Yi and his girlfriend. While everyone was hanging around the beautiful waitresses, the young man noticed Brother Xiang standing to the side and decided to talk about this topic with him. Baldy was ready to share stories about their boss, but he was curious for what purpose the main character was interested in this information. Although he might not have asked because much was really obvious only to men. They knew Yansu from ancient times. It was so long ago that perhaps their boss will not even remember it. Only such vague answers were too inadequate to satisfy the guy's request, so he demanded details. It all started at a time when Brother Xiang still had hair on his head, of course. Now he considered himself irresistible. But then he was even better. Then they got along great, and she had one guy who lasted longer than the rest, but the bald man couldn't tell much about him, because he didn't know him personally. He decided to give advice to the neophyte on their team. For Yan, many tried to hit Z, but only a few managed to get at least a grain of attention. Before the man had time to tell a story from the past, the same little girl showed up at the bar, although her mood seemed joyful, but in fact there was soon to be a fight. Yanzi did not plan to sacrifice her people, so she wanted to find out what brought one of the strongest members of their organization here. Everything was quite simple. The girl received information that someone was selling paradise past the cash register. This was strictly prohibited by their laws. She planned to figure this out and then take this man in her suitcase far and long. The bar owner did not want to resort to the girl's help because she knew that she was solving problems in a rather specific way, and this could end very badly. Then the girl wanted that out of all the workers. The one who was really involved in this would confess. This would allow others to avoid unnecessary problems. The girl who had previously sold the drink with the pill to Brother Wanwan was very tense because she knew that sooner or later, the top of the group would come to her. The main character was amazed at the impudence of the one who decided to go against their boss openly, because it was tantamount to giving up his life. Since no one confessed right away, Yansu suggested tracking the intruder using cameras. Identifying the right person with the proper skill is not so difficult. Only this will take a lot of time, but the girl with pink hair was in a hurry after all. The boss asked her not to stay here for long. Yan didn't like this arrangement, because even if it was her person who made the wrong decision, they all report directly to her, which means it's her job to find and punish the culprit. Among the suspects were almost everyone. Only Brother Xiang, the main character, and a couple of other people were not suspected because they were tested under harsh conditions. Unable to withstand the pressure, the girl selling the drug nevertheless admitted to what she had done. She asked for mercy because she incredibly needed money.